It's amazing to meet you. It is simply extraordinary.
Good for you.
The three of you've convinced yourselves you have extraordinary gifts like something out of a comic book.
We almost got you, bro.
Right, welcome everyone. This is the Comics in Motion show. I am Chris Phelps, and my co-host and good friend is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, Chris, and hello to our listeners out there. Welcome to Comics in Motion. What we like to do here is we like to review media like movies and TV shows that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be reviewing from the perspective of a long-time comic book reader.
And I'll be reviewing from mainly the movie and TV perspective.
And we'll walk through our given choice of the week, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle and give our thoughts on it. What we also like to do is we also like to spoil the hell out of everything we review. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, I'd advise you to proceed with caution. What we also like to do is when you can head over to Apple Podcasts and drop us a 5-star review or your podcast catcher of choice. And this really helps us to grow the show and gets us out to other listeners. So, Chris, we're embarking on awards season.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that the Golden Raspberry Award nominations are out. And it's funny because in the last year we've reviewed a lot of retro stuff as well, haven't we? So it's funny to look back and think, okay, actually, what did we review that was fairly recent? But something like, say, Venom, it got absolutely slated, didn't it, by the critics? And it's done amazingly well. But because it got so slammed by the critics, I was thinking, oh, maybe that might make an appearance. But no, not a single comic book movie is in the nominations at all.
That makes a change, doesn't it? I mean, I've got to say, Dave, I know Death Wish with Bruce Willis is in there, and I've not watched it yet, but a lot of people who I know have watched it have recommended the film. So, again, I'm going to have to watch that. I know the original Charles Bronson ones were really popular because they were like cult classics, weren't they? Ultra-violent and everything. But I'm quite surprised by that, to be honest.
Yeah, and obviously he's in our choice of the week, isn't he? So, he's pretty legendary actor, old Bruce, isn't he? Now, I don't think he's necessarily at his peak. He's not doing his best work now, is he? I think his best days are behind him. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised that old Brucey showed up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things. The raspberries are great, aren't they? Because they do actually weed out a lot of stuff which is pretty poor, And I think with what we've done this last year is I'm just not interested in what the critics have to say, Dave. If I genuinely like a film, then I'd rather make my own assumptions from it. And I've done that myself with being a gamer. I've done it with computer games where something's been poorly reviewed and I've avoided it. And then all of a sudden you find it in the bargain basement. I think, you know what? I'll have a go at this. And I've enjoyed it. And you think, wow, I didn't ever go at it the first time round. So you've got to see these things with an open mind, because I think Venom was one of the standout films last year as well. So it's great. Everyone's got a different perspective. I've got to say that. And as someone who goes to the cinema quite regularly, like 2 or 3 times a week now, it's interesting to see the films that I enjoy against the films that are critically panned. It's obviously I must have a totally different perspective on life.
Yeah, and obviously what we're going to review later and we'll announce later is it's probably another one that falls into that same category, isn't it? Panned by the critics, it seems. I can tell you, I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, before I went to see this week's movie we're reviewing, I went and watched The Upside on Saturday night with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. And I like Kevin Hart. I know it's the same format with him. And it's based on a true story, this, about a paraplegic guy who gets injured in a paragliding accident. And it's based on a story from France. And I didn't check the reviews. I didn't see anything. I just basically, me and Sam went to the cinema, watched Saturday night, and I absolutely enjoyed it. It was some proper to the knuckle jokes, Dave, really, because he was disabled and stuff, but we really enjoyed it. But then when I come out, I thought, you know what, I'll just have a look on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and it was at like 40%, and it got absolutely panned. Even off the actual cinema goers, it got panned. And I was thinking, oh no, but I genuinely thought it was really good. I thought it was really fun, and everyone in the cinema was laughing. So it just shows, doesn't it? You just got to watch these things yourself and make your own mind up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did think I'd have a look back. So again, none of the comic book movies from this year in the Golden Raspberry Awards, but there have been a few. Would you say, Chris, some poor comic book movies over the years?
Oh yes, Dave. Yes, without a doubt.
Now, looking back at some of the worst picture nominations, or winners rather, so we had Batman versus Superman, very obvious kind of comic book movie. The 2015 Fantastic Four, that was a previous winner. Catwoman was in there as well, and Batman and Robin, George Clooney with his bat nipples. So probably not many surprises that those are in there, but a couple that I noticed probably a lot of people don't realize they're based on comic books. So Barbed Wire made it in
All
there
right.
with Pamela Anderson, so that's based on a comic, and Son of Mask as well. So Mask, the Jim Carrey film, that was all based on a Dark Horse property. Son of Mask was the one that was voted for worst picture, but it's another one of those that I don't think many people would realize it's actually a comic book based movie.
No, and also I didn't, Dave. I'll be honest with you. And also, Batman v Superman was obviously that was voted the worst picture when it was released. But if you, there's a caveat with that. Have you ever actually seen the extended version of that?
No, don't really want to, but I've got a feeling you're going to tell me that it's better.
It is. It is. There's literally half an hour and a bit more of a Batman origin story to the film, which again begs the question. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dave. It was a 2.5-hour film. They had to cut stuff, but I think they cut the wrong things. It's 3 hours long, the extended version, but it does make the film more watchable. And honestly, I know you probably think no, but honestly, there's a few scenes in that sort of glue things together a bit more logically with Batman, and like the way he just appears in sort of with Superman and all that, with Metropolis and Gotham. It knits it together better.
So, in the spirit of obviously what we do for the show, I guess we're probably going to have to look at that at some point.
Yeah.
But it's have I watched the extended version? It's like saying I've shoved a fork in my left eye. What about if I shove a fork in my right eye twice as hard? Would you like to do that, Dave? Well, after I've done the first one, no, I'm all right. I'll leave it. So, the idea of watching an extended version doesn't fill me with joy, but I guess in the spirit of this, we'll review that at some point.
Maybe I can get you to say my famous line by watching extended one.
The thing is, and there were good things about that movie, but whether it's an hour and a half, whether it's 3 hours, I mean, it's not gonna change that bit, is it? Where you've got Batman on his own personal crusade to kill off Superman, and it's like, oh, our mums have called the same thing. Oh, let's hang out together.
Yeah,
I've got you all wrong, and then I'll go to. He goes to the funeral, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we need to avenge him." Me and him, we were tight. It's like, come on.
She's called Martha, though, Dave.
Martha. Oh, give me a break. So.
You can get lost, Dave. I've had to watch some right bobbins films. You're definitely watching it now.
I'll watch that, and then I'll watch a bit of David Hasselhoff's Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., just to cleanse myself.
Yeah, that must be bad. But saying that, you didn't like Man of Steel, did you? So
that's true. Yeah. That went straight to the Phantom Zone.
This week, it's been Oscar nominations, Dave, and there's a couple of surprises for us, and some that are in our realm with the podcast and the show. So we've got Black Panther, and we've got Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Black Panther's up for Best Picture. Spider-Verse is up for Best Animated Feature. And I've got to say, Dave, I'm happy about both of them, to be fair. I think it's fair. I'd still think that Infinity War is better than Black Panther, but I can't argue with it being up there.
Yeah, and I thought that. And especially, I was interested to see what you thought about it. About Black Panther specifically. So I thought it was really good. You thought it was good, but just not really great. And we both thought that Infinity War was a lot better. If you consider the average moviegoer, who's not... The problem with Infinity War is you have to have watched the majority of the Marvel films leading up to it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, if you're not fully invested in that universe, you'll kind of go into it like, and I don't know, you'll probably possibly enjoy it, but you won't really know what's going on. You won't be invested in those characters, you know, because there's no real build up. It's straight into the thick of it, isn't it? Whereas Black Panther is very much a standalone movie that you don't have to know anything else. You can just go in, you didn't have to watch Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy. You could just go in and just watch it and just enjoy it as a standalone film. And I think, you know, there are a couple of things that I think elevate it beyond all the other comic book movies. So having such a cast of black actors and actresses is not normal, is it? In Hollywood, normally, you know, Hollywood whitewashes everything. So let's face it, that, you know, having such a cast where, you know, they're all playing Africans. So I mean, a lot of them are American, aren't they? But all sort of playing Africans, and also having so many strong female characters as well. That isn't normal.
Yeah.
And so I think breaking some of those conventions, I think for me means, you know, that is why I think it genuinely, even though I think other movies are better, like Infinity War's better, I think for those two reasons, that's what elevates it to you know, take its rightful place in the nominated films for Best Picture.
No, I can't argue with that, Dave. And I think it's a sad indictment on, you know, to be a bit serious on the way we are, that it's taken till 2018 to have such a film come out, which is totally wrong. But I totally agree. It was a well put together film. It's an origin film. It was great. I just didn't fall in love with it. And I've not watched it since, to be fair. I did promise I'd watch it, and I've watched about half an hour of it when it was on the TV one day. And not that I didn't enjoy it. I just, because I'd seen it, I was thinking, well, maybe I should watch it again for like little clues for Infinity War and that. Maybe I should do it really, but I just haven't. But yeah, I have no argue with that. And also as well, Dave, I think with the Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, what a turn up for the books. Again, I mean, Marvel can't do anything wrong at the moment.
Well, the interesting thing about that is it was Sony in association with Marvel, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
most of the Marvel movies are produced by, you know, Marvel Studios, whereas Sony have had Spider-Man for years and not done a great job with it. Whereas this was just absolutely amazing, and I think it will win Best Animated Feature because as well as it being a really fun movie, the animation and the different styles of animation, you know, you had your different characters on there. You had Spider-Ham, you know, being very cartoony, almost Warner Brothers style, and then you had Spider-Man Noir, all very dark and you know, 1930s style, and all these different styles all there on the screen. You had the anime character. I think it's just, I've never seen anything like it. So I do think it was genuinely, as well as just going in and really enjoying it as a cinema goer, there's a lot of respect for just what they've done there. And again, for me, it breaks new ground that, you know, shows us something that certainly I've never seen before.
No, I agree. I absolutely loved it, didn't I? So I'm totally in agreement with you. It's one of the best things I'd seen last year. Again, it's probably I've probably collated now the amount of films and TV shows, especially the films. I could probably collate 5, and it's in my top 5 without a doubt. So yeah, totally agree, Dave.
Now, Chris, what I did notice, so obviously we've got Black Panther up for Best Picture, but its rival, I'd heard you and I had discussed a few weeks ago that you've rated this one up with Avengers Infinity War. So it's your mate Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born. So that's up for it as well.
Well, put it this way, Dave. I had the soundtrack on before and I was making the tea. So, and I've just had a YouTube on. I don't know what it is about that film, but it's such a tough record that it's even coming out on February the 11th on Blu-ray, and I'm buying it, Dave. So I absolutely loved it. I don't know what it was about the music, everything. I love the backstory about how it was created and everything. It's such good cinema, Dave. And even when it comes out and I'm watching it at home, obviously, like you say, if you're going to watch it on Netflix, it's fantastic. It's one of the best films I've seen last year. And I believe there's a couple of films coming out in the next few weeks that are supposed to, you know, knock it out of the park for other reasons. But for me, it was fantastic. Fantastic film. I think he deserves it, Dave. I really do.
So I think if I was a betting man, I would have to say that will probably win it for me. Just from what you said, what I've heard from other people, I suspect that will come out with Best Picture.
There was a bit of controversy. I know it's not a comic book based story, but that he wasn't actually up for Best Director for this, because obviously he directed and wrote it and all the music and that, Dave. So that was quite a bit of a kick. People were expecting him up for that, and he isn't. But I know Bohemian Rhapsody is, which I can't argue with either. That's brilliant. So,
well, yeah. So we'll get onto that in a second, actually, because I thought there's quite a few comic book interests, so actors up for different things. So best actor in a leading role, you've got Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born. Now, Bradley Cooper obviously plays Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy and Infinity War. You've got Christian Bale up for Vice, of course. You know, I think certainly from your perspective, the Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yep.
You got Willem Dafoe on Eternity's Gate. Obviously, I think his best role was Norman Osborn, but he was in the Aquaman movie as well that came out this year. You had Viggo Mortensen in Green Book. Now, this is a bit more of an abstract one, because another movie that probably people don't realize it's based on a comic book. He did A History of Violence.
All right.
So again, you know, most know him as Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings, but yeah, History of Violence. And we haven't looked at that one, but you know, we'll review that one at some point when we've got a quiet week. Now, the only other nominee was Sam Esmail, who's not really been in a comic book movie as such, but he himself is going to be writing a prequel comic to Mr. Robot.
All right.
And he's going to do that with Black Mask Studios. So when he does that, we'll have a full repertoire of all the actors nominated for the best actor in a leading role have been associated with comic book movies. And I think that says a lot, doesn't it, about just how comic book movies are dominating the box office and Hollywood at the moment.
Exactly. Totally agree, Dave. Totally agree. Right, so for this week's review, we thought we'd keep it current. We did review Unbreakable last week, and we have to go with M. Night Shyamalan's new one, Glass. So, Dave, have you got any comic background?
Well, as we discussed last week, this movie isn't based on a specific character or story from the comics, but spoilers, one thing which pops out to me is the existence of an Illuminati. You know, a shadowy organization that hides in the background, but is actually pulling the strings and making all these things kind of happen. So the idea of an Illuminati isn't a new thing. It's been around for centuries, but surprisingly, it's not really explored that much in the comics. Now, in 2005, Marvel published New Avengers #7, which was the first appearance of Marvel's Illuminati. Now, to set the context, this was before the Marvel Civil War, and you basically had, so in the Civil War, you had Iron Man and Captain America. They were at odds, you know, over whether, you know, they should sign on to the government as superheroes. But they'd created this Illuminati. So it had Iron Man, it had Mr. Fantastic, Namor, the Submariner, and Professor X, Doctor Strange, I think. So these really high-powered leaders, you know, in their different organizations, all getting together in these secret meetings to discuss what they should do. So in terms of continuity in the comics, this happened all after there was a Kree-Skrull war. You know, again, I think we'll see a little bit of that on the Captain Marvel movie probably. And basically, Tony Stark said, well, we could have avoided all this if we'd have just shared information amongst ourselves. All a little bit topical, really, isn't it, with data privacy and stuff? Now, Black Panther was another one, so he was in it as well. So another leader who's at that table in this Illuminati. And so they all basically agree, yep, we should go ahead and continue these meetings. And Black Panther sort of begrudgingly agrees to join it, but says, you know, eventually it'll be a disaster because we're going to come to a point when we don't agree. Now, since then, you know, the Illuminati have met and influenced various events throughout the years, and one that I'll call back to that we have touched on before. So, do you remember Planet Hulk?
Yep.
So at the start of that you had the Illuminati. They were the ones who'd sent the Hulk off. And it's the same in the comics. You know, he'd smashed up Las Vegas, which I remember you were saying you weren't happy about. And so they decided the Hulk's just too dangerous to have on Earth, so we're going to send him off onto a planet where, you know, he could knock himself out in an unpopulated planet there. Or so they thought. Now, another shadowy organization, which is almost the reflection of the Illuminati, came out a few years ago, in and around the time when Norman Osborn was running the Avengers. A bit of a weird time, but that was called the Cabal. So it was essentially like an Illuminati, but they just had a different branding to say basically this was a group of baddies, you know, and who were having the same kind of meetings. Now, I love this idea of this shadowy organization pulling all the strings. You know, if you go back to the Silver Age, you know, the 50s, the 60s, it's all about just, you know, superheroes apprehending supervillains and stopping them robbing banks and stuff. Whereas this is more political, and it adds a bit more depth to the things that go on. Now, joining the Illuminati, I mentioned the core characters there. You have had other people join in. You know, Beast was there for a time when Professor X was dead for a little bit, and then he got better, as they do in the comics. But someone who I doubt yourself, Chris, and probably most people don't even know, and I don't think he'll ever make it to the big screen, quite honestly, but he was a member of the Illuminati for a bit, is old Captain Britain.
Slip off the lip, old chap. Yeah.
Yeah, so Brian Braddock, I doubt he'll ever appear, quite honestly, on the movie. Now, we haven't reviewed Iron Man 2. There was a kind of Easter egg. There's a character called Union Jack, and he first appeared in around. It's set in the, I think it was in the Invaders, and it was set in the Second World War. And one of his names, you know when they're doing the kind of Formula One race driving.
Yeah.
So his name was one of the drivers that appeared up on the screen. So Union Jack, and I think that's about as close as we're going to get to seeing either Union Jack or Captain Britain on screen. But anyway, so that's as close to a comic background as I can give. So now, Chris, have you got any movie background for us?
I certainly have. Now, obviously, last week we touched on a couple of the ideas that M. Night Shyamalan had come up with for Unbreakable. So some of these do cross over. So forgive me on this week's movie background. But in 2000, after the success of Unbreakable, Bruce Willis wanted a trilogy. He was expecting a trilogy, but M. Night was not so sure on it, Dave. After, as I said last week, it was a commercial success, especially with the DVD sales. He approached Touchstone Pictures, obviously, who were mentioned last week as well. I wasn't sure and didn't know this, and you knew this, were part of Disney, about a sequel. Now, they put it on the back burner, and for years it was in limbo. 2008, Samuel L. Jackson was quoted as saying he was hoping that they'd put something together for a sequel of some sorts. Bruce Willis was the same, but it just never seemed to happen. Shyamalan was doing different projects by then. In 2016, after like nearly 16 years, he released Split, where we had the backstory of Kevin Wendell Crumb, played by James McAvoy. Now, that was an absolute critical and commercial success, Dave, which was pretty much the opposite of Unbreakable. And the whole idea of Split was really well received. So from there, the reason that David Dunn appears, spoiler, because I haven't even seen Split, but obviously spoiler if anyone else hasn't seen it, but Bruce Willis's character does appear at the end. Now, this was an idea for Shyamalan to connect the two films. Willis's character Dunn was made, as I said, under Touchstone Pictures banner via Walt Disney Studios. And then Shyamalan had to approach them to use Dunn as a character because Split was being made by Universal Pictures. So Shyamalan met up with Sean Bailey, who's the president of Disney Studios, and said, look, is there any chance we can use him? There's a gentleman's agreement. No fee was involved. He just said that you guys will be involved in some sorts with Glass, you know, if I do make a trilogy. So that was agreed, which was great. And it was also the first time that Shyamalan really thought about making a trilogy by tying it all in. And by bringing Dunn in at the end, it also tied in with what Elijah had said about there being other people out there and superhumans. Then this is where the whole idea for Glass came about. So they targeted January the 18th for release, 2019, which they rightly did. It came out on that day. I found it quite astonishing, but at the moment, the budget was only 20 million for the film. And I've checked this on a couple of sites, not just, one article. I've checked various other things as I do when I go looking for information. And at the moment, it's made over 100 million. So already it's made 80 million worldwide profit, which is really good. As of January the 21st, it had made 46.5 million in the US and Canada alone. And then in all other territories, it's made 48.5. So it's been a success already, which is really good. Now, critically, it's been pretty poorly received, actually. It's at 36% on Rotten Tomatoes on 269 reviews with an average rating of 5.1 out of 10. And then on Metacritic, again, it's at 42% out of 100. That's of 48 critics with an average user score and CinemaGo score of a B, which is quite good, actually, Dave. Now, I'm quite happy with that because obviously last week Unbreakable was a C. Now, one thing to note, just before I wrap all this up, is there's a couple of scenes in this where Bruce Willis, there's nothing in Unbreakable, but Bruce Willis's character, there's obviously flashback scenes, and I'm thinking, wow, that is amazing CGI, but it wasn't. He actually very clever, but Mr. Shyamalan actually used a lot of deleted scenes that were never used in Unbreakable. So some of the train scenes, some of the scenes with David and Elijah, they were actually filmed in 2000 when they made the first one. So that's why I was really blown away with a couple of them, thinking, wow, it's really like de-aged him, but he didn't. He just used old footage, which is quite clever, really, because we'd never seen it.
Isn't it interesting that you thought that? So possibly might come across as a bit smug, but where my mind went to initially was, oh, he's stuck in a deleted scene. That's a really clever, cost-effective way of keeping the budget down. Because if I was watching maybe a Marvel movie, my mind would go to de-aging.
Yeah.
But I guess there was something about it. It was slightly more grainier. I thought, when David was saying, good night to his son and whatever, I just thought it was slightly different. And when you saw, a younger Bruce Willis on the train, it wasn't quite the same picture quality. So that's why I just thought, oh, brilliant. You've used deleted scenes.
Very clever. I didn't even think of that. I just thought it was clever CGI, Dave. But yeah, unbelievable that. And again, very clever technique, very clever, because you don't hear of that, do you, in a lot of films? So I'm very impressed with that.
No, it's really good. And I have to say, so Shyamalan, I see, has said, he's done with this universe now. But, I mean, that is a great return, isn't it?
Yeah.
20 million budget. And as a rule of thumb, they say it's not quite right, because it depends how much you spend on the marketing. So it's not quite right. But as a broad rule of thumb, you say double the budget and that's your break-even point. So if their break-even point is 40 million, they're already into what did you say? They made 80 million?
100. They already made
100 million.
No, they made 80 million profit so far.
Yeah. Well. So again, so how much is the top line? How much is it grossed?
100.
100. Okay. So they profit wise, if you double the budget, you say they've made, so clear profit is at least sort of 60 million right now. That is brilliant. If you look at some of the more expensive and the more expensive the movie, the higher risk. So I think that's an unbelievable return on a budget like that. And I think, there'll be companies, I'm sure, whether it's Disney or Universal, someone's going to be chasing him surely to say, look, can we just expand on this universe? We've had to wait. This trilogy has spanned 19 years, hasn't it? So, I'm sure in the future, let's round it up to 20 years. I'm sure, if old M. Night Shyamalan hits a bit of hard times and someone waves a big checkbook and says, do you want to do expand on this universe and do me another $20 million movie? what's he gonna say? You know, I think he's gonna have to take it, isn't he?
So, Dave, should we go into the review?
Yep, let's go for it. Just before we dive in, I do have to say, so I'd watched Split, and I know you hadn't seen it, and because, again, spoilers, it's literally right at the end. It's a bit like an end credit scene. So, you know, like Iron Man, you've got Nick Fury turning up right at the end. Well, that's how David turned up at the end of Split. That was it. It had nothing to do with the story at all. So I'd confidently predicted to say to you, you don't really have to have watched Split, I don't think, because I can't see how, you know, it's going to affect it too much. But James McAvoy's character was really front and center in this movie, wasn't he? So I think it probably would have helped with your understanding of his character to watch Split before, but I mean, I don't know if it affected your enjoyment as such, but where we come into the story, obviously he's obviously got this dissociative disorder, and he's got these multiple personalities, and he's kidnapped these 4 cheerleaders. So you can see a glimpse of some of his personas, and he keeps referring to the Beast. And, you know, even if you haven't watched Split, you're kind of thinking, well, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
And we get to see David and his son, and I thought, what an absolutely brilliant move. Now, there's not many people who will have gone through the same experience as you and I, you know, watching Unbreakable last week.
Yeah.
But to watch him, you know, his son Joseph and David, you know, this, to have the same characters, to have this move forward in real time, I just thought was absolutely brilliant. And you know, some people when they get older, you can't recognize them, can you? But you know, you as soon as he appeared on screen, you could tell it's like, oh, it's his son.
Yeah, 100%, Dave. I thought it was great. I really did, really did. And even though he's aged 19 years, I know it sounds silly, it's the same person, but you're right. He still looked really young, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was good. He was good casting that, and very clever again. He must have obviously, there was a bond between them all. Obviously, he was a young kid in the first one, but I respected that. I thought that was a really, really clever thing, and it wasn't a case of recasting someone else, because he could have gone with someone more current, because the lad who plays his son isn't exactly a household name, is he? So, not these days anyway. Do you know what I mean?
I've not seen him in anything else. And we were laughing last week, weren't we? We were saying about the young kid, and we were saying, oh, he's probably about 30 now.
Yeah. Yeah. A very youthful 30, I'll give him that. But yeah.
He is, yeah. But, you know, we get, when we saw Unbreakable, we kind of got tricked into watching a comic book movie, didn't we? Whereas with this, when we're introduced to David and Joseph's world, it kind of feels comic booky already. So you've got David, and he's got all of these labels that the media have given him. The Overseer was one of them, the most prominent one that I remember. But you've got Joseph, who is basically like the guy in the chair. You know, when you had Spider-Man Homecoming, and his mate Ned, I think it was, wasn't it? Kept going on about, can I be the guy in the chair? You know, the guy in the background with all the information and computers to hand, and helping the superhero on the front line. You know, that was kind of his role. And so I thought straight away it felt more to me than Unbreakable, like I was watching a comic book movie.
Yeah, I've got to say, Dave, for something that's not based on a comic, it's so clever that the whole film's based around imaginary comics, isn't it? And you know what? Obviously, Elijah's created this world, and I know we're expanding on the characters, but I just think it's really bizarre that there's no backstory, is there, in what's actually on the screen, and it's like the polar opposite, really, of what we do on the show, which I think is really clever that we're reviewing it. I love that. Do you know what I mean? It's still it's still comic book based, but it's comic book based within the film, and I think that's really clever.
Yeah, and it's like inspired by comic books, isn't it? As opposed to just lifted from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're quite different. But I mean, we see he ends up taking down a petty kind of YouTube mugger. I don't know if there's a different label for it, but you know, they get this guy, you know, basically just gives someone, they call it a Superman punch, don't they?
Yeah.
And you know, his mate's videoing it, and you know, basically just a coward's trick, you know, to punch someone who's not expecting it and stick it up on YouTube, and you get to see David, you know, sort of if we were watching a different movie and we didn't know it was David, it'd feel a bit more, maybe a bit like Saw or something. You know,
Yeah.
you'd think it
Halloween.
was the balance. Yeah, you'd think it was Michael Myers or something. But no, they get their comeuppance, and David's the one to dish it out. So we get a little glimpse into the fact that actually, you know, probably in the last 19 years, he's been hard at it. You know, righting the wrongs out there, and Joseph's been pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yeah, I thought it was a good little scene, David. Very, like I say, very horror orientated, the scene, because you don't see David's face. He's got the whole over Mac thing on, and the big like overcoat that he wears, which I'd not realised actually, Dave. The reason he wears that is it's supposed to be. You said this last time. It's his kryptonite, isn't it? Really, because of the water. That's why he wears it in the film. That's like his sort of force field, because he don't like water.
Yeah. Now, I'd said about the color scheme, you know, for Unbreakable, and he's very green, and you've got Mr. Glass, who's very purple. In Split, you've got the Horde, you know, Kevin or James McAvoy's character is very kind of orange. But I didn't even think, it's so obvious when you say it like that. Why would you wear a poncho? Well, to look sinister? Well, you're supposed to be a superhero. No, it's to keep the water off him. Of course it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I honestly, until you posted that, I didn't realize myself.
No, it's one of our facts of the week, wasn't it? And I genuinely hold my hands up. I didn't even pick up on that when I was watching it. I know he didn't like the water, but I didn't even associate the two, Dave. But yeah, it makes perfect sense, really. A very subtle, and I think as well, watching this, even at this early stage, it's given me an actual understanding into the mind of Mr. M. Night Shyamalan, because I actually respect him after watching this. I'm not going to give away, you know, till the end of Scores, but I think he's directing and his mind is very, very clever.
Yeah, I mean, he was a hot property, wasn't he? When he did Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, he was a really hot property. And then I can't remember what did he do? I can't remember what order they came out in, but he did Signs, and then he did The Village, and then it started to feel a little bit tropey. It's like, okay, it's an M. Night Shyamalan. Okay, you know, where's the twist? You know, and so I think people got a bit bored, and then he just made things which weren't of the same quality. So he fell out of favor for a long time. But me personally, straight away in at this point in the first kind of 10, 15 minutes of the film, I'm thinking this is a return to form.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I know. And we get the battle there between the Horde and David, don't we? David goes and rescues the cheerleaders. He's bumping into people, isn't he, on the street, and then he acts all these builders and stuff who've got like the hard hats, and then eventually he does come across Kevin, doesn't he? He's got like his beats on and his hood up, and he's got this like tracksuit on, and this very colourful yellowy orange tracksuit, and he catches him. And then he sees the girls, doesn't he, in the flashback, and he's like, right, you know, to his son, we've got him. Where is he? And he's south, so he knows he hasn't got a lot of time on, but he's got to get to rescue him. And he just comes in, doesn't he? And they're panicking like mad because he just keeps seeing this silhouette. And then we get the whole confrontation between, you know, the first confrontation between Kevin and David, which he's really good. I love that stupid voice. You just go, yo, bro. And he's got the little lisp and stuff, you know, proper list. And then he turns and doesn't he? And he gets all that, the black veins done into the beast. His shirt comes off and everything. I mean, McAvoy's absolutely shredded to buggery on this, Dave. He looks absolutely awesome, doesn't he?
He's been working out a bit, hasn't he?
He looks really good. I mean, he's not got a big frame, but he carries that weight well. He really does.
No, he's obviously he's been working out quite a bit. I think I was wondering. There's obviously some CGI there, so I think the kind of black veins and everything are probably put on as a bare minimum. But I don't know how much of like him bulking out It's not as if he's like The Rock, is it? He's not
No.
huge. He's not a wrestler sort of size, but he's stuck a bit of muscle on, and he's just not got much body fat. So that, accentuates the definition that he's got. But yeah, I mean, again, we've seen actors like Tom Hardy, transform their bodies for these roles, and it's pretty impressive. But I think for me, he steals the show. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd recommended Split to you off air, I think, hadn't I? And I think having seen Glass and how much he's in that, I would say you've definitely got to watch Split, because I it's more tense. It's more like a Hitchcock kind of thriller, as it builds up, and through most of the movie they're just hinting at the beast. So it's more the origin of that beast, and it's just talked about between these different personas that Kevin's got. Whereas in this movie, we just, we get I can't remember what his name is. It's not Ruprecht, is it? The young kind of 9-year-old boy, that's we get a lot of him and some of the other ones, but the beast comes quite early to have that showdown with David. But as well as transforming his body throughout the movie, the way he switches his mannerisms, and forget the accents, he obviously nails all these different types of accents, the American, the English. I think, is there an Irish one in there somewhere?
Yeah.
He just nails all of those, but everyone comes with different posture. And for me, the film's called Glass, but McAvoy steals the show.
Yeah, and I must admit, Dave, it's made me come away from the film thinking I need to have watched Split, really, because really, on there and on screen, he's probably on the screen 60% of the time.
Yeah.
Out of the others, and then you've got a split between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson's characters of maybe not even 20%, really. I mean, you're sort of wishing David's on there a bit more because Unbreakable centered around him, but Kevin in it, his character, the Beast, it's all around him and his backstory, and it's all pivotal on him, really, more than anything, because Samuel L. Jackson doesn't actually talk in this film till at least over an hour into it, at least.
Well, that was a surprise for me, because the film's called Glass, and I go in and I'm expecting it to be more about David and Elijah, but no, it was more in the first half of the movie. It's more, well, the first third, you get more of David, or the Overseer, and the Horde, if we give them their superhero names.
Yeah.
And it's only later on, isn't it, before, like you say, an hour or so into it, where Samuel L. Jackson actually says anything.
Yeah, which is just bizarre, isn't it? And I couldn't work out how he just turned into this comatose state that he was in. I presume it's supposed to translate to the drugs he's on in this mental institute, but I found that a bit of a far stretch, if I'm being honest, because there wasn't really a backstory to that properly.
Well, so again, okay, so we'll come to that in a sec, but where we are in the story here, so David and Kevin, or the Overseer and the Horde, they have their showdown and they're battling it out. David's released the cheerleaders, so they're running off, but the police catch them both, and they take them both down. And so they end up, we think again, I'm thinking I'm watching a superhero movie, and where's this going to turn? And they just carted off to a mental institution.
Yeah.
So I tried to stay away from most of the reviews and stuff. I saw that they were negative, but didn't really know much about how the story was going to turn out. So carting them off to a mental institution was a bit of a surprise. But then we get into basically Dr. Ellie Staple. So, psychiatrist, and she specializes in people who think they're superheroes, which I think is about as niche as it gets. That is a real specialist study, isn't it?
Yeah, and all. Yeah, I don't know how you'd actually study that at uni, Dave, but also she has one of the strangest facial features and expressions, and I've seen her in other things, but I pretty much could see for the minute, and I said this to you when we spoke after I'd watched it, but you could pretty much see that there was some sort of dual meaning to what she was doing going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just knew. I'm not trying to reveal already what's going to happen in the film, but you could just tell that she wasn't as convincing to me as obviously the three main characters. If that she was there to serve the plot, and she's there to be like this sort of clever person who's a, she's a doctor, professor, whatever she's supposed to be, but it just wasn't that convincing, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, I think I'd said to you last week though, when you go back and you watch Sixth Sense and you go back and you watch Unbreakable, then on the second rewatch you think all of this was so obvious.
Yeah.
Why didn't I see this coming? So I don't know if your subconscious is maybe telling you, I'm watching an M. Night Shyamalan film, so, look out for clues, everywhere,
Yeah.
because some twist is coming somewhere. And I think it wasn't that subtle. I don't think they were trying to be that clever about it, because just the colors are very prominent in this whole trilogy, and the fact that she was very bright, very pale, something about her facial features just jumped out at the screen to tell you she's not just a supporting character here. She's got, something significant to offer to this story.
I agree. I mean, the first time we see, she's all in white, isn't she? She's got like an overcoat on, and you are completely correct. Other than her red lipstick, she's as pale as they come, isn't she? So I do agree with that. But I will say, Dave, when you were saying that about thinking it's subliminally, I never forget being in the cinema, being absolutely blown away with the ending of Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I did not see it. Me and Sam watched it in 1999. And I was 21 then, and I was I just couldn't believe it. I was like, I did not even question it, see it. And then all of a sudden it was like you said last week about Usual Suspects. I think it was more dramatic than the Usual Suspects, because it was just unbelievable, that film. So I don't know whether it was that, but I think he's probably just, I've said to you before, it's probably just either movie or review fatigue. Yourself when you're watching these things, there's going to be another little twist somewhere. It didn't cross my mind, but whether it was just something saying all the time, there's going to be somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it didn't ruin the film. I thought, I think she's a good character. It's just, I don't think she was as convincing as he was trying to make her for me.
Yeah. No, I see. I look at it the other way. I look that, it's intended to be a little bit of a nod and a wink to the camera.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for it, you're thinking, there's something not quite right there. But yeah, it's funny you're saying about Sixth Sense. I mean, that was so, I don't want to say revolutionary, but it's the only word that comes to mind. But it was so embedded in pop culture, wasn't it, for a few years after that? I think I've only seen it the once. It's like Usual Suspects. I've only seen it once because I don't feel like I need to see it again. But the whole, I see dead people walking around like regular people. It's so chilling. And I think I've only seen the main movie once, but I must have seen it parodied a million times. So no, it was a great movie.
Really
But
good.
What I found was a bit strange was that she was saying that how delusional they all were. And this is where you get Elijah, isn't it? So he's all doped up and sedated. And so, you kind of, I think there was some of the things that Dr. Staple had said, which, she was saying she doesn't agree with it. I think that's what it was supposed to be. He's all drugged up because he's so intelligent. He kept getting out of his cell and stuff. And, they basically, to manage him, they just drugged him up.
Yeah.
But, she's telling them that they've got these delusions of grandeur, but they stick them in specialist cells. So she's like, David, you think that your weakness is water. It's not really, but we're going to create this specialist cell at huge expense, to manage you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you wouldn't really do that, would you? Unless you thought that they were really they really were superpowered. So again, I don't know if that was another intended wink. I can tell you in Split, there was nothing that suggested this thing where they're flashing the light at Kevin, and on flashing the light, he'll change into a different persona. So if he looks like he's starting to turn into the Beast, they just flash the light and then changes to something else. There was nothing in Split about that. So again, that was potentially another clue. It was either lazy writing,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like, oh, we need something to get him to change on demand. Or, you know, if I'm to be kind, I would say, well, that's another clue that she knows things that she shouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so for this type of disorder, she knows that flash a big light at them and they'll change.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that actually. So you've already answered my question. Was it in Split? So yeah, interesting, because that's how they arrest him, don't they? Just before they take him there with Bruce Willis, when he's with David, that's the first thing they do, just start flashing lights at him, don't they? So
Yeah, the police. So obviously they didn't know that at the time, but it, you know, flashing the lights as the police, that converted him from the Beast into one of the other personas.
yeah, it's interesting. But then obviously they all get visitors, don't they? So
Yeah,
obviously, you know, David gets Joseph, his son, Elijah gets his mother, and then the girl who's got really fetching eyes, Casey Cook, which I didn't realise till afterwards. You explained who she was. She's actually out of Split. She's the only one who escaped, isn't she? And she goes to
that's right. Yeah.
he actually goes in to see Kevin or the Beast, which I found. That's like you say. That's the point where I'm thinking I need to watch Split, just to sort of tie everything in my mind more than anything. For like you say, the completest thing. Yeah, it's something that I do think I need to do.
Yeah, so she's kind of an honorary Brit, you know. I think she lived a few years when she was born in Argentina. Like her parents are from all over the place, but she's grew up most of her time in London. So she's, I mean, she's a very pretty young girl, isn't she?
Yeah,
But I think the bit that was a bit of a stretch for me is so she's basically think Silence of the Lambs. Probably not. Yeah, Silence of the Lambs, not Jodie Foster, but one of the girls who's been imprisoned, you know, and in you know, shoved down the hole or something. It's basically like escaping that, and then in this film, she kind of wants to go and visit him and like be his friend and stuff. I think that was a little bit of a stretch for me.
yes, and I must
So,
admit, Dave, you're answering a lot of questions that I had in my head. Thinking I sort of understood what Split was about, but I'd never seen it. And looking at Kevin's character in this, I was thinking, is she his love interest or what? You know, I just didn't understand that. But now you just said it, that makes it even worse, I think.
yeah, what was the line in Silence of the Lambs? She puts the lotion on his skin unless it gets the hose again.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I've not seen that for about 20 years, I don't think. So yeah, I think she right. Okay, so let's spend a bit of time on Casey. I was going to make a pun there, but I'm going to refrain. So basically, I think they hint that she's some kind of empath. She's got some sort of power as well.
Yeah.
Because when she touches, do you ever remember Wolverine
I was
Origins?
just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So his girlfriend, you know, she had that power. She needed to touch someone, and then she could influence them. I think they're hinting here that she has got some sort of powers, and it happened in Split. So I think, you know, she did have some kind of bond, and basically she's been abused herself. And spoilers for Split, but that's why the Beast lets her go.
Right.
So she, you know, because she's tainted, she's suffered, he feels a connection with her. And she gets to meet Kevin. You know, Kevin doesn't grab the light very often. He normally hides in, and it's all the other personas that come out and take over his body. But yeah, I think they're hinting here that she has got some sort of power.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just draw a line under the fact that I would definitely say, definitely watch Split, even though you're watching them out of order. I watched Empire Strikes Back last. I saw Star Wars and then Return of the Jedi, and I can still enjoy it as a trilogy.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. I will be doing that, and I want to report back on that on the show as well. What I think of it. So
yeah, well, we could always review it at some point, couldn't we?
yeah, true. Very true. Very true. So obviously, next segment we get all three of them are in this sort of group therapy session, aren't they, with Dr. Stable, and all three. That's a bit of a stretch, Dave. I've got to say, the way they wheel them in and they're sat there, aren't they? And it's. I don't know. It makes for good TV. It makes for good movie and good cinema. But again, would that really happen? She's trying to convert three abnormal people, like the normal. I was a little bit. It looked good, but my mind was thinking that's never going to happen in real life.
Yeah. Well, I thought it looked good.
That's what I mean. It looked good.
Yeah. The very pink background, and I just thought it looked great. So that's all I was thinking at the time. Not how plausible was it, but yeah. I mean, essentially, spoiling the end, but she knows the powers that they do have. So, it's a very dangerous thing to just put them all next to each other.
Yeah, and obviously Elijah's not speaking at this point either, is he? So he's got the twitch, and he's just basically. He's just there, and he's nil by mouth at the moment. So the interactions are all between David and Kevin, aren't they?
Yeah. And she's pretty convincing, isn't she, in explaining away all these things. And so you've got David and Kevin. They're obviously, old Elijah's just comatose, dribbling into his chest there. But what she's saying is pretty convincing, and they're thinking, hang about, maybe I have just been deluding myself. Now, for me, it starts to ramp up here, though, the film.
Yes, it does.
So, Elijah, you realize, has been just having us all on. So he, and this is, in terms of the drugs don't work.
Yeah.
he's been swapping his drugs. So he's just been taking all these headache tablets, and just having an act. And you can see as well, I think the orderlies, the carers in there are not particularly nice people as well. I think so you don't necessarily shed a tear when they get the comeuppance a bit later. But Elijah's breaking out of his cell. He finds the file on the Horde, and he's like, "Yep, okay, more validation of my theories." And so he breaks into Kevin's cell, and he basically tells him he wants to unleash the beast. And I like the way he says, let's hope he likes you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good, actually. Really good. And I think as well, Dave, is Samuel, I think this film worked better for me because of my sort of distaste towards Elijah, if that makes sense. I was never completely convinced of him as this sort of super villain and stuff. I know his mind, and he's obviously working 5 or 6 steps ahead of your average person, but I was never completely convinced by him. So the fact that he's sort of a peripheral figure in this is probably the reason why I enjoyed it more than Unbreakable. I want a bad guy who has an absolute fight at the end and just like wants to, there's a big showdown and everything. And obviously we didn't really get that in Unbreakable. It was very clever what they did. But I think with this, it's more my sort of bag, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, he was obviously key, wasn't he? But he played more of an understated role. And at the end of Unbreakable, we had that line, didn't we, from Elijah's mum, that you have villains who fight with their what was it? Fight with their muscles or fight with their strength or something, and then you have villains that fight with their mind.
Yeah.
So here we've got both, haven't we? We've got the Horde, Kevin, James McAvoy's character, who's obviously very, very strong. But then you've got Elijah, who's pulling the strings behind the scenes, and very, very clever. And as we get further into, towards the end, we sort of start to appreciate his genius kind of level intellect.
Yes, he's very much sort of like a Professor X type intellect, isn't it? Without the mind reading thing, he's so superior to everybody. That is absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct with him. But
I mean, I was thinking Lex Luthor. That if I was to say he's anyone, it's that. Lex Luthor's just, physically he's just an average bloke, isn't he? But his intellect, all right, maybe not in in Superman 1 and 2, the movies, but in terms of the comics, he is right up there in terms of his intellect.
Yeah.
But basically, and I didn't see this next bit coming, so they catch him on the cameras. They see that he's been outside of his cell, and then they basically, perform an operation to lobotomize him. And I thought, wow, crikey, how's he going to get out of that? And that's where a little bit after that, you can see again he's sort of acting like he's comatose there, and then just gets a bit of glass and just slices the orderly's throat.
Yeah, because he's tampered with the actual machine, hasn't he? The brain machine.
Yeah,
so he's taken out like the 4 magnifying pieces of glass. But yeah, the orderly who gets it, really, he was actually all right, wasn't he?
He seemed to be a bit of a nice guy, didn't he? Just a bit, talks a bit too much, but didn't seem to be anything particularly sinister. But yeah, he went in a not too grisly a way. I think probably the other guy got it worse, but yeah. So Elijah convinces the Beast that he's got to fight David because Dr. Staples, he's got into Kevin's head. Maybe this is all just made up, and it's a coping strategy for the abuse that he served earlier in his life. Again, in Splits, you get to see a bit of that, and I don't know. I assume it was an intentional callback, but do you see on the magazine? So Elijah's saying, you need to fight on the top of this city's highest tower, which is opening up tomorrow, and this grand spectacle for the world to look at. If you and David are fighting together, everyone will believe, you exist, and the Horde, so all these different personalities are having their doubts. They're starting to believe what Dr. Staples saying. And so, on the magazine, it's got, what was it, a True Marvel or something like that?
Yeah.
And it was so in your face. And again, but I was seeing it on the screen. I was like, oh, Marvel.
Yeah.
It's an obvious call out.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I wonder if, if you're not a comic book nut, if you'll notice that at all.
Yeah. No, I was the same. I noticed that. There's a few little Easter eggs, weren't there, throughout, even Unbreakable as well. But I think as well, Dave, this sets it up nicely. But I was thinking, I can't see. I didn't know what the budget was at this point, but I was thinking they've not really expanded upon anything other than a couple of warehouses and the actual hospital. I thought, I'm going to be surprised if they go to this building, in there. And that's just me thinking out loud, when I was watching it. I wasn't like dragging it off or tearing the film there, because I thought it was really good. And obviously, Elijah then says to David, doesn't he, that, you've got to sort of break out of the cell. He gets on the mic, doesn't he? We get a bit like a throwback to the Warriors from the late 70s, if anyone's watched that, where we've got all we see is the woman on the microphone, don't we, on the radio thing, saying like Warriors, and he's doing a little speech to David, isn't he? And because they've not spoke or anything since Unbreakable, because obviously Elijah was playing sort of
comatose.
Comatose. So he comes and says to me, and then David starts charging, doesn't he, at the door and denting the door and stuff. And these little things here now where you are absolutely correct. If I watch this again, because there's a bit where he knocks the door off and David turns and looks at the camera, doesn't he, as he gets out of his cell, and then he goes down to the sort of mess area or that the storage area to get his coat on, doesn't he, in that, because we've already seen that Samuel L. Jackson's dressed like he's some 1970s pimp with the cravat on and that. I don't remember him wearing that at the end of Unbreakable.
No, he didn't. But this was a proper, this was a supervillain suit, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, and again, a bit like you said about he was almost a 1970s Lex Luthor in the original Superman. He wore something pretty similar, didn't he? In the first one, he was living under the sewers, under the subway.
Yeah.
He had the full cravat on and like sort of purple velvet jacket on. And obviously David gets his gear on. And then I must admit, Dave, I thought this showdown with Kevin or the Horde was brilliant. Absolutely. Because, you know, Elijah's convinced the Horde now, and the Beast, and he is all Beast, and he's not anybody else now. All the other personas have gone. And they have this showdown on the lawn, don't they, outside, which is absolutely top draw. It's very, very well put together, because obviously there's them two girls that the Beast he's grabbed them, and he threw him in the back of the van to sort of get him. But David comes, doesn't he, and rescues him, like, you know, get out of the way, and they have this proper Russian standoff across the lawn there. I thought it was brilliant. It was really convincing. But I've got to say, Dave, don't you think there was a bit of a callback to the Beast as well out of X-Men? Because when they sort of got revved up, they were both going to go at each other, and they'd already had a bit of a scuffle. The Beast goes across the floor like,
it sort of runs like an animal, doesn't he?
Yeah, like Hank, you know, out of X-Men, even though he is the Beast as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection, even though, you know, it's Beast and he's called the Beast and he's kind of running along like Beast from the X-Men. I hadn't made that connection at all. But yeah, I just thought it wasn't a particular callback to that character, but it was just another indication that, you know, he's doing something that's not superhuman, but beastly.
Yes. And the way he moved is fantastic. I know that's CGI that day, because he definitely doesn't move like that. But
well, I think I'm not sure. I thought it was probably practical effects, that, you know, he was probably just on wires suspending him.
Yeah.
But, you know, who knows? It wasn't just it wasn't just as great a performance as James McAvoy put. So I don't think he could carry that off. But yeah, I thought the showdown was good. I thought it showed that they were fairly evenly matched as well, weren't they? And I like the fact that, you know, in terms of David breaking out of his cell, he still doesn't know his own strength. You know, he looks at the door and he thinks, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only the fact that if he doesn't do it, you know, it's all these people are going to die. And so he finally does it. So his strength, or, you know, with the Hulk, they say, you know, the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. It's almost the same with David. He's as strong as he needs to be, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree. And obviously, he's a 60-year-old bloke in this, isn't he? So he's aged. He's not like he's stayed the same as well, and he's absolutely aged. So I think it's comparable to that as well, Dave. A bit like Old Man Logan, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Very good point.
But like I say, they're fairly evenly matched, and Elijah tells him that, you know, David's weakness is water. Now, we'd seen that. So David had tried to say to Joseph, hadn't he? You know, lifting 350 pounds isn't anything particularly special. There's strong men who can do that as well. You know, there's nothing super heroic about it. So he's been on his own little Google investigation, and he's found out that Kevin's dad was on the train at the start of Unbreakable. So the one that Elijah had hijacked, or sabotaged rather. And so effectively, Elijah has killed Kevin's dad.
Yes.
So he turns up and he tells that, and then that's the turnaround, isn't it? Because the Beast kind of he thanks, you know, Elijah for creating him, but he's ultimately there to protect Kevin. And so, you know, he can't let him live. And so, again, you know, Elijah has these brittle bones. And even though I know it's the actor, Samuel L. Jackson, when he grabs his shoulder, I'm thinking of his brittle bones and stuff. And again, it made me wince, you know, when he was doing it. And then he gives him a plant in the chest, and you know, you're pretty sure for a normal person, this superpowered beast, you know, would it probably see off most people. But when you've got brittle bones, your rib cage has just got no chance for that. So, you know, he takes down or takes Mr. Glass out of the equation there.
And I agree with you. Me and Sam watched it, and we were both wincing. I was like, "Oh dear me," you know, like proper. I'm not just saying it. I genuinely, and I agree. And that's good acting, Dave. As much as I had a bit of a moan about Elijah as a character, that I thought that was brilliantly acted, because you did think that. You're like, "Oh, he's a goner now. That's him done." You know,
Yeah.
he goes. And when you say it like that, you forget about that. Really, when you're watching, it is convincing. But again, you know, then the beast goes for David, doesn't he? And he throws him in that big water tank, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And they're sort of battling in it, but the water tank's cracking in it, and it's cracking and cracking, and David's giving it sort of a backhander while he's trying to fend him off, and then eventually it all explodes, doesn't it? And they end up on the floor, the pair of them. And the beast sort of legs it, doesn't he? And says, you know, he's going to sort of finish him off at the tower. But Casey turns up, she's obviously seen all, she's talking to him, and he's sort of calming down, and the next minute he just gets a bullet through the stomach, doesn't he? Like in his well-chiseled six-pack, he ends up with a bullet through there. And
Yeah.
we then find...
And
sorry.
so I think at this point, this is where it hinted at it earlier in the story, but this bit is where I really thought, now she's some sort of empath or something, because she has to touch him, you know, and then he turns into Kevin. So again, I don't want to spoil Split, but they talked about it in the therapy session that, you know, he'd been shot by these shotgun shells, you know, when he was the Beast, and it didn't do him much damage. So,
Yeah.
you know, there was something superhuman about it. And they said, well, you know, they could have been bad shells or whatever. But when he's not the Beast, he doesn't have all these physical, you know, invulnerability traits. So, yeah, he turns into Kevin. And then, you know, you get to see that there's a marksman there. You see a little shamrock, and you think, aye, what's going on here? And just shoots him and takes him down. Now, that's okay. He's the supervillain. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's probably, he was Kevin at that time, but he's still a very dangerous individual. What happened next, though, I didn't see coming.
You talk about David.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little problem with this, Dave. Mr. Skeptical over here. Is David's obviously never been hurt. He's obviously aged, and he's aging in normal real time. But they're saying like Waters is, you know, he's kryptonite, I suppose. I know we're always going to fall back on that, but everyone says it about anybody, don't they? Kryptonite. Even, you know, with the Marvel films, they joke about kryptonite, don't they, and stuff. But genuinely, I had a tough time believing that just some random guy could all of a sudden drown him. And not just drown him, but he's taken out the game. I was expecting some sort of resurrection or him coming back to life. I wasn't wholly convinced by that, because David's whole thing is about the fact that he never actually gets really hurt. So I couldn't work out how they could just finish him off.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it hook, line, and sinker, to be honest. I mean, obviously, they rarely kill off Superman. They do it occasionally, and then find a way to bring him back. But, you know, so think Superman 1, okay? He's got kryptonite around his neck, and then they throw him into the water. And it's only because Miss Tessmacher gets in there and takes the kryptonite off. So that's a bit of writing so he can go off and save the day. Well, what if Miss Tessmacher wasn't there? Surely he'd just drown, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that's what it was with David. He's weakened by the water. And then you've got, it's not just some average bloke. So it's not an average bloke. This is probably a specimen of a well-trained hitman, isn't it? You know, so I'm sure he's human. But again, for me, because David was so weakened by the water, it didn't seem that much of a stretch to say, well, he could just go and he's already covered in water, just drag him over to that mud puddle and drown him.
Yeah, that actually makes sense.
Well, that's why we discuss this stuff, isn't it? So, but before he is actually drowned, and I was just blown away. I was like, you can't blinking kill him off, but they did. But before that happened, Staple, which I thought was a bit weird, but this was probably more for our benefit than the stories, that, you know, Dr. Staple lets him touch her so he can see actually she's part of this shadowy organization, the secret society, where they actually know about superheroes. Nice effect, I thought, you know, all being in a crowded restaurant. I mean, you could just meet in a barn in the middle of nowhere, but let's have it in a crowded restaurant. And, you know, the person who's not in the club walks out, and then everyone goes quiet, and then, you know, meeting adjourned. So, yeah, I thought that was good. And she feels like, you know, she's feeling quite smug. So she lets David know. So before he just gets killed, she rubs it in his face. And then she goes across to Elijah as well. And she says, you know, the comic books have got it wrong. You know, it's not supervillains and superheroes. It's actually organizations like ours who we treat you equally, you know, and the general public can't know about you. And so she's being pretty smug and goes back to the secret society and tells them, you know, mission successful, and happy days. And I do have to tell you, Chris, I was watching this movie, and at this point, there was quite a few people in a few rows in front of me got up and left. And I'm like, do you know anything about this director? I mean, I know some people just go and watch a movie. They don't know necessarily who the actors are, who the directors are, writers, and whatever. But surely you knew this was part of Unbreakable, and you knew there was a massive twist. You probably knew that it was related to Sixth Sense as well. And I'm thinking, that is not enough of a twist. There's another twist. There's a twist upon the twist. I'm sure of it. So, plus I didn't actually know if there was going to be an end credit scene as well. But yeah, as soon as I go up, and I'm thinking, oh, so why would you do that? But yeah, so it looks like the story, because we spend quite a bit of time on this, don't we? And Dr. Staples, she goes off to the comic book shop, presumably doing some research. Bit random for her to be there, and she overhears a geek conversation, doesn't she? And this guy's saying, "Oh, the villain, he always has what you think is his plan, but he's always got a secondary plan, you know, and that's his real plan. You know, it's all a bit of a misdirection." And then she has a kind of epiphany, and she she realizes that, you know, she goes back to the cameras, doesn't she? She goes back to the institution, and they find this bit of code, which we'd seen Elijah writing up a bit earlier in the movie, but we didn't know what it was. And he's been streaming the footage from all the cameras to somewhere else, you know, outside the institution. And she's like, oops. And that was the main twist, wasn't it? That she's thinking the Illuminati have won in the end, but actually Mr. Glass, he's the one who's won.
Yeah, because he does mention, or she mentions quite smugly halfway through the film, that there's another 100 cameras going up, which again, if you look back, he's literally throwing it in your face, Mr. M. Night there, saying, hello, McFly, you know, this is something to do with the plot. So, yeah, but you don't see it. I didn't even see it until the end. It was like, oh, yeah, there you go. Very clever.
Yeah, so they have the supporting characters, don't they, all together. They bonded. You know, they've just seen all of their loved ones, you know, kind of murdered. You know, Casey and Kevin, maybe a bit debatable, but she had some sort of connection with him. And so you've got Elijah's mum, you've got Casey, you've got Joseph, and they're in what looks like a train station, and they've put out this video on the web, and they're just waiting for a reaction, which, all right, seems a bit weird. And then you can see that people start to look at it, you know, and the words getting out. And so, you know, the secret's very soon to be out, you know, as this thing goes viral. Now, I do have to say though, how many dodgy videos have you seen where, you know, it looks like something's happening, you know, and I'm not even just talking David Blaine, I'm just talking any random amateur videos that are put out there. I think I struggled to swallow that very last bit, which was, oh, everyone just watches, you know, this footage and then they're blown away by it. It was just, I thought, where we are in 2019, I think people are a bit more skeptical than that these days, aren't they?
I think as well, people are a lot more tech savvy, Dave. You and I, who you know, we're always messing about with tech art. We were watching YouTube, we're editing stuff. You can pretty much see if something's a Photoshop, something's an edit. There's something not completely 100% with it. But yeah, I didn't even think of that. But now you've just said it, that's a very good point. Actually, I don't think it would be up. So. Actually, Dave, I did see a video today of somebody, as you're saying that, streaming something on a pub TV screen as the barmaid was actually serving. And I'm not going to say what it was, Dave, but you can imagine. And the barmaid's going mad at the pub because all the lads are streaming this video, shall we say, and you pretty much know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I suppose it could be like that.
Was it a bit of mummy and daddy time, was it?
I think you call it coitus, don't you, Dave?
A bit of live coitus.
Yeah. but it was a classic video. But what I'm saying is it's that sort of Big Brother situation, I think, what they're getting to, aren't they? It's sort of a bit of a dig at the current world we're in as well. So, yeah, I didn't think of it at the time, but that's a good point.
Yeah, again, you know, not pointing it out to be try and be clever or anything. It's just that it just popped into my head that, you know, with the amount of videos and content you've got out there, I think it's quite hard to make a video go viral. And if something genuine like that went out, then a lot of people would just be thinking, oh, that's a clever bit of trick.
Yeah.
You know, it's a clever trick. How have they done that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. So, Dave, are you ready to go for our review scores?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, I am 100% certain, Mr. Horrocks, that it's you this week. So
I think you're right as well. So, going into this movie, I knew a couple of things. I knew I loved Unbreakable and Split as well. I knew that it was an M. Night Shyamalan film. It was going to finish off this trilogy, and I was quite looking forward to it. The second thing I also knew is it seemed to get panned by the critics, so it was hugely disappointing to. And I didn't read any of the reviews, but you just can't help but see like the headlines and things like that, and you see on Rotten Tomatoes and what have you. So going into it, I'm thinking I'm expecting to enjoy this, but I think you're going to let me down because I'm hearing all of these negative things, and I watched it and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, I am probably not exactly the median demographic. I am not I am someone who is well invested in the comic books. So, you set a few scenes in a comic book store in a movie, and immediately I'm bought in. I'm like, oh, look at that. And I'm looking at all the background, seeing if I can recognize any of the comics in the background or anything. It is a comic book movie as well. So again, it's another point for me that, I'm probably going to enjoy this one. But I thought this took... It was, again, a very quiet movie. Like we said, Unbreakable was bit more action, so less introduction of the characters. And I just thought it was great. I thought really, really enjoyed it. It built upon what we knew from Unbreakable, what I'd seen from Split as well. I thought the star of the show was absolutely James McAvoy. And I saw a quote from Samuel L. Jackson as well. So, he was obviously in awe. He'd said, something like, paraphrasing a bit, but as good as an actor as I think I am, You know, what McAvoy had done was something else. You know, seeing him change into these different personalities in front of your eyes is just something to behold. So with all of that, I'd have to say I'm going to send this one to Atlantis. Now, I did send Unbreakable to Atlantis as well, but I think this one is slightly a stronger Atlantis. It's up there and pushing towards Asgard. I do think Glass is a little bit better. But what I would say is it's probably a bit like Avengers Infinity War in that you need to have watched the other movies before to get that full enjoyment out of it. You need to know what the whole story is. But yeah, that's it from me. So Atlantis it goes.
Good stuff. Now, for me, obviously, I scored Unbreakable last week, didn't I? The Hell's Kitchen. You know, I wasn't that impressed with it. I did say I'm going to go back and watch it because I watched it in 2 stages. But for this one, Dave, and it may be a fact that I sat down and I haven't watched Split, which I've said a few times today. I saw little snippets on Twitter of people slagging it off. No spoilers regarding the actual outcome of the film or anything like that. But I was thinking, oh no. And then I saw on Facebook on the Odeon website, where obviously I have my Limitless card, some people were just absolutely, but put it this way, they were just putting 4-letter comments, Dave. One, and it started with S and ends in T. So I'm thinking, this is going to be poor, you know. So I wasn't looking forward to it. And we actually put off watching it on Saturday night because I didn't want to ruin a Saturday night film. And we went to watch it Sunday morning. And I've got to say, I absolutely got it. It just was a bit of me. There was more action in it. Like I say, McAvoy is outstanding. Some of the best acting I've seen, Dave. To just totally be a schizophrenic and have a personality disorder on screen like that, it's very, very clever. And it didn't look like he was being cut in and out. There was only a couple of times where he changed character off screen. He did it there and then. You know, I thought it was really good, really good. And he wasn't used to different camera angles to trick you into thinking it was one take. It was literally in front of you sometimes. So I thought it was brilliant. Yeah. I thought it actually worked better that there wasn't as much Elijah, as I said, but also I think even David as well, Bruce Willis's character, it made a bit more sense to build for that sort of end battle as well. And also the fact that he's an older bloke now. Like I say, I had a problem with the way they took David out, but I was umming and ahhing, and I'd said to you when it came out, in my head, I was thinking it's going to the halls of justice, but I don't think it is. I think it's like you. I'm going to send it to Atlantis because I genuinely think it's got some of the hardest criticism I've seen of a film, and I just got it. I just got what he was going for, and I really will go back and watch the whole trilogy again because I think it deserves something. There's going to be stuff there across all 3 of them that I'll get now that I've watched Glass. So yeah, great film for me. And please don't listen to the critics. Go and watch it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I just got it, and I really did enjoy it.
I have to say, if you're a young, aspiring actor, you've got to watch it. For me, this should be required watching because what McAvoy delivers is just a masterclass in character acting. I mean, the fact that he can do it. I mean, we sort of joked last week, didn't we? You know, Samuel L. Jackson basically plays himself. It's a bit like Ryan Reynolds. You know, he pretty much plays himself in the different roles. It just, you know, sometimes when it's like Wade Wilson when he's playing Deadpool, it just absolutely works. And so, whereas McAvoy, you know, he's changing into like, you know, he's changing into an old like teacher type headmistress lady, and then he's changing into a 9-year-old boy, and then he's changing into like what seems to be a horny young girl. You know, it's like, how is he doing that? You know, and it is just so impressive. But like I say, if you're interested in acting, I think you have to watch it and just, you know, think, well, how does he do that? How does he get into the minds? Because it's not the accents, it's not the body shape, it's the whole package, it's everything all together, how he just becomes these different people.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree, Dave. Now, just before we go, we've got a couple of plugs today. Now, myself and Dave, once a week, host the Comics in Motion radio show on Indie Rocks Radio. Now, if you get over to www.indierocks.co.uk, you can stream from there our show, and it's got all the latest indie hits and a lot of new bands on there as well. So please get over there and give us a support. And if you want to follow us on there, it's at Indie Rocks UK, and that's on Twitter and Facebook. And then also for the Comics in Motion, if you want to follow us, the Comics in Motion, it's at Comics in Motion P on Twitter and Comics in Motion Podcast on iTunes or all podcast hosting sites. What, got any plugs yourself, Dave?
Well, I'd just say if you could head over to Apple Podcasts or your podcast catcher of choice and drop us a 5-star review, that would be absolutely lovely. And that just helps us grow the show and gets us out to other listeners.
It's about time I got you on this. But what are you going to finish off the show?
Well, I have to say, one line, I mean, Elijah in this whole trilogy has not been your favorite, but I really liked him. And I don't know why, but I just absolutely loved the line and the way he delivered the line. Just the arrogance of it, you know. Again, in Unbreakable, Elijah was he was discovering who he was. Whereas in this film, he knows he's the man. He is the super intellect, that super villain. And so when Kevin asks him, or the Horde asks him, who are you? Just says, first name Mr., last name Glass.
David Dunn, the only person to survive that train wreck all those years ago. What do you do?
I'm in security.
My name's Patricia. I have no question. There are 24 identities.
I'm Mary Reynolds.
It's not a cartoon. This is the real world.
No way.
Some of us still don't die with bullets. I hope for your sake that he likes you. That sounds like the bad guys teaming up. What do we call you, sir? First name, Mr. Last name, Glass.